Hello and welcome to Narrative, a journey into the ancient art of storytelling. A place to gather by the fire and share the stories of our ancestors. A place to gather and tell our own tales. Here we will explore legends, fairy tales, myths, and folklore. We'll have conversations around archetypes, history, theology, and the ancient mysteries, as well as having discussions on how it all pertains to our lives. Before carvings or hieroglyphs or written word, our ancestors kept their stories alive through oral tradition. In honoring them, I too want to continue this path. Thank you for joining me. I am your host, Mary Rogers. Imagine, if you will, a grand and ancient temple before you. Grand columns and stones etched with stories throughout the ages. A sanctuary lost to the sands of time. You enter the temple and find yourself in a round room, a cave of sorts, where sunlight cannot enter. Incense is burning and there are candles flickering, dancing in shadows along the circumference of the room. Soul songs and sacred chants, one sound building upon the other, until there's a faint chorus of symphony, whispers floating on the wind. Tall, ornate doors carved from grandmother trees follow the curve of the room, and each door is guarded by a veiled priestess. In the center of the room burns a pit of fire. Hearing a primal, guttural sound, you squint to adjust your eyes until you see her there. Crawling on the dark earth is a woman, sifting through a pile of bones. Before her, the body of a wolf, or at least its skeleton, is beginning to take shape. It's then that you finally notice the walls behind the torch sconces are not made from limestone and earth, or even rock. You have entered catacombs lined with skeletons, and in the heart of the sanctuary is this woman, a wild woman, singing over the bones. In 2016, I facilitated an offering called Awakening the Wild Woman Within. The foundation of the container was based on the book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. In her book, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes retells the story of Loba. And as we're moving through the dark goddesses, which embodied the wild woman archetype, it feels really important to share her story. Because within every woman, there lives a powerful force, passionate creativity, and ageless knowing. She's the wild woman who represents the instinctual nature of women, the woman who lives in nature, who follows the cyclical spiral path, who gathers plants and herbs and communes with the wild, a woman led by her intuition, a woman who lives by the cycles of the moon, a woman whose life is built on the pillars where earth meets sky and the very fabric of the ethers, a woman who dances with the elements and sings over the bones, a woman whose very nature is primal, instinctual, whose life is built around offerings and sacred ritual. She is eros and passion, sex and rage, fury, fire, and pleasure. She is both creatrix and destroyer. She's liberation. In the fall and winter seasons, as we're forced to find shelter from the elements, we're forced to go within. And in the same way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, this is also the time to traverse the underworld, to hibernate, to contemplate, to grow. As we lose light and sun and we're thrust into this darkness outwardly, it's a perfect time to also shift within, to begin excavating the deep, rich underbelly of our souls and psyche. It's a time to challenge our beliefs, our thoughts, our guilt, our pride, and our shame. Every child is grown in the dark ocean of their mother's womb. Every seed is sown in the dark soil of the earth. In the soil, the threads of mycelium weave a bridge from above to below, connecting us to our ancestors, to each other, to nature, the wild, and everything in between. This is the time to embrace the dark face of the goddess, to embrace the dark mother in order to alchemize our rage, our grief, our shame, throwing it all into the transformative cauldron of fire, so that just as the goddess who travels the underworld through the fall and winter and rises once again in the spring, we too, like the phoenix, can learn to resurrect ourselves on the bed of holy ash. This is the time to sing over the bones, to call back the fragmented pieces of our souls, to sing over the bones and to honor every aspect of ourselves, This here, right now, is a time of integration and sacred reclamation. And according to Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the dark goddess, or wild woman archetype, as initially presented by Carl Jung, is she who turns like a great wheel, the maker of cycles. She's the one we leave home for, and she's the one we come home to. She's the mucky root of all women, and she lives at the bottom of the well, in the headwaters, in the ethers before time. She lives in tears and the ocean, and carries with her always sacred medicine and the ability to heal. She carries stories and dreams and words and songs, signs and symbols and synchronicity. She is both the journey and the destination. There's an old woman who lives in a hidden place that everyone knows, but few have ever seen. Like the fairy tales of Eastern Europe, she seems to wait for lost or wandering people or seekers to come to her. She is Loba, the wolf woman. Loba is the collector of bones. She's known to collect and preserve that which is in danger of being lost. Her cave is filled with the bones of all manner, deer, rattlesnake, crows, but her specialty is said to be the wolves. She creeps and crawls and sifts through the mountains and the dry riverbeds, looking for these wolf bones. And once she's assembled an entire skeleton, when the last bone is in place, and the beautiful white sculpture of the creature is laid out before her, she sits by the fire and thinks about what song she's going to sing. And once she knows, once she's sure, she stands over the creature. She raises her arms over it and sings out. That is when the rib bones of the wolf begin to flesh out, and the creature begins to regrow its fur. Loba sings some more, and more of the creature comes into being. Even its tail curls upward, shaggy and strong. Loba continues to sing and sing until the wolf finally takes its first breath. And even then, she continues to sing some more. She sings so deeply that the floor of the desert shakes. And as she sings, the wolf opens its eyes, leaps up, and runs away down the canyon. Somewhere in its running, whether by the speed or by the splashing its way into a river or by way of a ray of sunlight, the wolf then turns into a laughing woman who runs free towards the horizon. So it's said that if you ever wander the desert and it's near sundown and you're perhaps a little lost, certainly tired, and if you're lucky, the Loba may take a liking to you and show you something of the soul. We all begin as a bundle of bones lost somewhere in the desert, a dismantled skeleton that lies under the sand. But this is a resurrection story about the underworld and its correlation to the wild woman, or rather the dark goddess. And in this tale, a Loba sings over the bones she's gathered. To sing means to use a soul voice. It means to say on the breath the truth of one's power and one's needs. It means to speak our truth, your truth. It means saying yes when we really mean yes, and saying no when we really mean no. Loba, the old one, the one who knows, is within us all. She thrives in the deepest soul psyche of women, the ancient and vital wild woman. Loba is the old wise woman, the crone. She's plump with a milky white eye, the eye of an oracle and seer. She stands between the worlds of rationality and mythos, the seen and the unseen. She's older than time and speaks in rhymes, riddles, and poetry. The metaphors in the story typify the entire process for bringing a woman to her full, instinctual, wildish senses. Within us is the old one who collects the bones. Within us are the soul bones of the wild woman. Within us is the potential to be fleshed out again as the creature we were always meant to be, to become, to realize, to remember. Within us are the bones to change ourselves and the world around us. Within us is the breath, our truth, our longings. And together they are the song, the creation hymn we've been yearning to sing. And this process of redemption, resurrection, and reclamation, it reminds me of a soul retrieval I did many years ago with an indigenous shaman to reclaim the lost and fragmented pieces of my soul. And there were pieces of my heart that I had left all over the place, way back in time, shattered by broken hopes, dreams, lovers, friends, and these pieces of myself. I had to find them, and I had to pull them all back into myself in order to really become whole. And it's this process that I'm speaking of, a process of collecting the bones and singing my own soul song to bring them all back into myself once again. In this way, we can think of Loba as the keeper of the soul, because it is she who records and knows all of the stories born within our lives. And it is she, Loba, wolf woman, wild woman, that finally commands us, go and gather the bones. Go and gather your bones. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Narrative. If you are moved by today's episode and are looking forward to future broadcasts, be sure to hit subscribe. And as always, likes and shares are appreciated and donations are always welcome. I had a great time with you today, and I can't wait to be with you again next week. Yours truly, XOXO, Mary Rogers.